Hello, all you surfers. I have something special here. This is the first of its kind, and I hope to continue doing this. Basically, what I'm doing is this Rave Mandala reading, which we're going to be doing today, Gate 6, Line 2, called the Gorilla, is typically done inside our surf report, our weekly energy surf report. But it's getting so in depth, so deep, just to describe the continuity or the continuum. And I figured it'd be best to put this into a separate video. So basically, we're looking at is a full worm blood moon in our next surf report, and it's going to be in a Gate 6 line 2 of the Rave Mandala. Rave Mandala is coming from the human design system. It's you can do your research and figure out what that means, but it's basically the astrology on steroids is what some people claim it is, but it's a system that employs astrology, Kabbalah, and the I-Ching. And I've found that in our surf reports, our energy reports, because we've been using this ray for quite some time, we basically take the biggest energy of the week and plot it into the Rave Mandala. And then we, use that reading to get solutions, behaviors in order to best surf the energies of the week. So anyway, this is what we're doing in this video. We're going to take the eclipse, which is the biggest energy of the upcoming energy report, and we're going to talk about which Rave Mandala gate unlocks because of it. So the purpose of this video is to discuss and analyze the Rave Mandala reading for the upcoming lunar eclipse for our next CIRF report. And this is not going to be a video about the eclipse itself. That's going to be in the CIRF report as well. This one is just the Rave Mandala associated from where the eclipse takes place. All right. So what we're going to do is plot this into our conversion chart. So let me show you that now. So this is a standard place in our I-Ching, in our CIRF report. I don't know why I keep saying I-Ching, but this is our conversion chart. So this is how we go from tropical to human design gate. And then we also do sidereal astrology, but that's not going to be part of this video. So here it is. Here's the lunar eclipse. It's a full worm blood moon on the 13th if you're in the far western side of the window. And in the CIRF report, I will talk about where you can see. I'll talk all about the eclipse, okay? So this one is just talking about the rave. So how do we get it? We plot it. It's in Virgo, 23 degrees, 57 minutes of Virgo. You follow that line and you get hexagram 6. Or in human design, it's called gate 6, line 2. That's where the eclipse will take place. So we're going to talk about Rave Mandala gate 6, line 2. So first, big picture of the gate. The I-Ching portion of the human design has a gate and a line to it, and the gate is the hexagram, so conflict. It says the fundamental design component of progress, the law that growth cannot exist without friction. So this gate, big picture, and I'm not going to speak too much about the big picture, but just to summarize it, it's basically improving your position. And you can see it already says it includes a tension or a friction, but the whole point is growth, improvement, self-improvement mainly. But if there's a consequence that grows others, it's not anti-others, but it's not like a self-sacrificing kind of a growth. It is a personal growth. And if other people grow as well in this endeavor, great. But it's not mandatory. Its main thing is that self grows. And then line 2, this is where the moon is going to be for 2 hours during the eclipse, at the time of the eclipse. Now, of course, the eclipse, the blood moon, is longer than that. But the essence or the climax of the eclipse, the very center, is right in this line. It's called the gorilla, and it's not like the ape gorilla, but it's the fighter gorilla, or kind of its inferior position. So big picture of this line, it says the ability to maximize an inferior position through timely contact and withdrawal. Now, in human design, it's special to human design, not the I-Ching, but this is the I-Ching in the context of human design. What they did is attach a ruler or an archetype, a planetary archetype to the increment and decrement. In this case, the increment is Venus, meaning that we start the action or start this polarity with more of a Venus flare, and then we finish up with the Mars aspect. Now, what are those extremes in this case? Aesthetic sensitivity and mental detail can find the weakest point. The sensitivity to find the weakest point in a conflict and to exploit it emotionally. And what we're going to do is I'm going to explain in detail all about this polarity. And then I'm going to show you a real world example of how this is playing out. Ultimately, that's to help you figure out how this polarity is working in your own personal experience. The decrement is Mars, and in the very extreme is the kamikaze, striking but moot, meaning that you're going down in flames, making a big to-do, but nothing happens. It doesn't make any impact. A lack of sensitivity that blunders into conflicts. So you can see if there's too much Mars, the whole thing gets conflicted. And so that's why we need a lot of Venus that has mediation, negotiation, emotional awareness. Okay. All right. So that's the big picture. But in my research, extensive research is what I'm going to share with you. I'm renaming this line to be called Underdog No More, the sensitive gorilla. In this line, you have themes of empowerment and self-improvement. You have themes of strategic engagement and conflict resolution. You have emotional intelligence component in there and very like skilled empathy, but more in terms of finding a weak area, an emotional weak area that you can exploit to improve your position. Yeah, it does sound manipulative, doesn't it? But actually, we're going to avoid control and manipulation and do this right. It navigates very delicate situations with huge implications. What I've noticed in my research, and that's why we have this kamikaze note on the decrement, striking but moot. There is an air of importance. It's not just going to be your mundane situation and you're just going to slightly improve it a little bit. This dynamic seems to come out in really dire situations, as you're going to see in the example, and potentially catastrophic, like at the edge. That's why this gate line combination is so important to realize. All right. So the key component here is to improve and grow, especially in areas where you are the underdog. But if you do this gate and line effectively, you will be underdog no more. All right, the ends of the continuum. We have the increment of Venus. She represents patience, empathy to dive emotionally deep. We don't want like the surface stuff. We want the real deep emotions, right? And we're not doing counseling and helping them resolve. We're strictly looking for emotional vulnerabilities, emotional sensitivity, and we're not pretending. It's not a skeptical place or an intimidating place. It's you really do have empathy here. It's authentic. It's real. But then we also have the Mars on. Oh, I'm sorry. Hold on. When we go to extreme Venus, We have now an element of self-sacrifice, and as I mentioned earlier, this continuum doesn't have self-sacrifice. We have it in other gates and lines, but just not this one, not this dynamic. It's not indicated. It's for self. The whole dynamic is for self. Finding too many deep emotional issues is what Venus might do because she cares. Too many things to work on. It might be very little progress just because there's so much. The inability to prioritize like one main theme, that would be good too. But those are the extremes. Venus might also have too much patience, not willing to really go in and assert yourself, hanging back, waiting for them to give you the improvement, right? Won't work if it's too much Venus. Unwilling to exploit the deep emotional understanding obtained. So it holds on to Venus and doesn't give the roll over to Mars, and there's no transition over to Mars. So on the decrement, Mars is needed in order to finish this continuum, and it does. It adds some aggression to target the problems offensively or defensively, as the case may be. The Mars does lack emotional sensitivity, almost a robotically. It doesn't really care about the effects of the other. I know it sounds horrible, but it doesn't care. In order to do this gate and line, it doesn't care emotionally. It's the Venus part that does care, but Mars doesn't. When it's an air of selfishness to improve my position. That's the Mars aspect. When you get extreme Mars, this is where we get into problems. Now it starts to get combative, unwilling to listen, just focused on the task alone. And this is where you have a shot at, like, no pun intended, but shooting yourself in the foot, or burning the whole city down, or catastrophic fatalism is the ultimate Mars. Way too much Mars, where you're burn the whole thing down. Fine, at least you can't enjoy it either. Shooting yourself in the foot to spite the other. That is the extreme version of this that we don't want. So we want a little mix of both. Venus starts and does her investigation, and Mars quickly goes in there, asserting self and maybe aggressive if need to. But we need balance in these continuums. And how to balance this one in particular: number one, integrate emotional and strategic skills. So we're going to use the emotional sensitivity of Venus side to identify and address conflict points patiently, constructively, asking authentic questions in emotional style, emotional vulnerabilities. And you can care because Venus cares. And then maintain ethical standards. So ensure that all actions, whether strategic or emotional, are guided by ethical considerations to prevent manipulation and harm. We're not here to harm anybody. We're not here to tear the other down in order to increase our position. We're bringing our position, we're shoring up our vulnerability to enhance our position, period. But we're going to prevent harm from taking place in order to get that improvement. It's not a relative improvement compared to the other. All right. And then we focus on long-term solutions, not just ad hoc, short-term destructive impulses. So aim for sustainable resolutions that address we need the Venus aspect to make sure that it's relevant to the root cause of the conflict. We need to avoid short-term destructive impulses that are too heavy-handed. That's too Mars, too catastrophic, without little regard for the other. And then we can cultivate self-awareness. Regularly assess one's own emotional state and motivations to prevent fatalistic tendencies. All right, here's our example, and we're going to put Trump in here. We got the tariff, the world tariff situation. Doesn't this sound just like the gate and line that's going to be unlocked at the time. All right, so what we have is someone who perceives, in this case it's Trump, is perceiving or at least declaring that he feels like we are in the inferior position and with in terms of tariff. He says, quote, we always have to pay and they never pay, unquote. And quote, they are ripping us off, unquote. Now, the goal here isn't to figure out who's real, who's true, who's false, and do fact checking. We don't care. We don't care about if this is real or not. All we care about in our example is his perception. He's perceiving the USA is the gorilla in this situation. It's the inferior party. So in the increment, we're going to think of the emotions first, and we're going to think of self, our emotions. Trump's emotions are frustration, anger, bitterness, even cynicism, claiming unfair advantage. And then the others, there's other emotions, right? So it's not just good enough to be self aware. We will also want to use the emotions of the others. And what he's clearly identifying is the fear. He's tuning into the vulnerability indicated by the fear of the others. There's other emotions too, fear of losing money, maybe anger. Canada's threatening, yada, yada. But all these are emotions that Trump will most likely um, target as a vulnerability. Now, so then you take Venus and also wants de-escalation or not de-escalation necessarily, but to prevent escalation. That's the biggest one. Preventing escalation to like World War III. So, in the decrement side is the finishing. Now, we're not anywhere close to finishing this, but you can start seeing the decrement or the Mars started by Trump starting some of the tariffs. Apparently, I'm not a big expert on which tariffs have started and which countries or whatever, and that's not the point of this. The point is he's used a little bit of Mars to start some of the tariffs, and it was exploiting a financial vulnerability and greed as viewed by Trump. Okay. But we also see aggression, hostility, and threats from each side. So each side is playing this. And if we have too much Mars on one side or the other, or both sides, then we're going to see too much Mars, too much conflict, and we'll see escalation. That's not what the Venus aspect allows. So when we start to see escalation, you might be seeing financial kamikaze actions where rulers from around the world, including Trump's, as some people claim, are willing to shoot their own foot in spite of the other. But well, you haven't seen this in extreme examples or absolute extreme that I know of. So here are the keys to balance this example, this tariff issue. We need the Venus part, the patience and tolerance, enough to prevent financial or trade escalation. Or worse, World War III. Obviously, we want to maintain enough Venus for empathy, consideration, mediation, but we don't want too much because that's self sacrificing. And what that'll mean is procrastination. And that would be the opposite problem, especially for us people in the people in the USA with the dollar, because if the status quo continues, which is what too much Venus would infer, if we have too much Venus, everything gets delayed, procrastinated, and maybe nothing ever happens, and there's no Mars that enacts anything, then we are sitting here just in an inflationary period and might even go into hyperinflation and nothing happens. And we are we get the problem on us. So we need a little bit of Mars in this tariff situation to start closing it down or bringing it to a close. But also avoiding fatalism, not too much Mars, or fatalism or the financial kamikaze. So now, in order to, like, as Mars comes in to start moving this resolution towards resolution, if it starts to escalate, that's when we would have like pull back to like a Venus, like start negotiating more and start caring. And it can be authentic. All right, so big picture, what can we infer from outcomes with rave readings? Can we infer headlines from the rave readings? Like, can we know how this tariff thing is going to pan out? Is it going to be a big flop or is it going to be a big success? You know that you can hear both sides of those, and they argue that they think they know. Well, I don't know, and but I can see this continuum playing out, and I can totally see this polarity playing out. That's the only sure thing I have. But can, in big picture, in the CIRF reports, can I use the rave in order to ascertain headlines? Not yet. Possibly, though, I'm considering it. What I can say is that all the technologies and sources used in our CIRF report have found that the Rave Mandala readings each week would be the most relevant, insightful, and employable modality that I use for creating what I used to create for the CIRF report. And we're going to take this video and put it, the nuts and bolts, into our CIRF report that comes out on Wednesdays. Wednesday is a weekly CIRF report. So as you can see in this particular rave is the summary is right here. Underdog no more. Using Venus and Mars correctly, congruently, knowing when to turn one on, turn one off, increase a little more of the Mars, but not too much to where you get catastrophic, etc. So contemplate on all those. In order to maximize the benefits of these rave readings, I suggest spending time contemplating this material, especially from your own point of view, and to watch for the dynamic to play out in your own experience, particularly this week. This week is the eclipse, 13th and 14th, and you're going to hopefully see a spike of this continuum. So meditate on it, play with it, review this material so you can know how to use the Venus aspect and the Mars aspect. To what? What's the purpose? To improve your position, to improve your inferior position, maybe on something. I don't think that you're going to use this too much when you already have a superior position on something. I don't think this line is being all that utilized. So think about something that you feel is sort of unfair, or someone has an unfair advantage, and then figure out how Venus and Mars can be used together to improve your position. All right. I expect gate 6 and line 2 polarity to be a main continuum to watch for in the next two weeks for sure. These eclipse energies are much more than just a full moon. This next eclipse is the full moon, full blood moon, wormwood, worm moon. And its effects normally for a full moon are, 20 plus or minus 24 hours. Some people think that the eclipses are more like plus or minus a week. So that'd be like 2 weeks of this continuum on climaxing, seeing it everywhere. So look for it, is my recommendation. And then be sure to go to our National Dream Center on YouTube page and subscribe so that you can join us on our weekly CIRF report. It's the energy and solution. So I'll give you what the main energy is. This week obviously will be the eclipse, but also a triangulated solution through one of them through this rave. All right, everybody. Thanks for watching, and we will see you on Wednesday. Take care. Cheers.